Sarah sat at her kitchen table early one spring morning, staring at an envelope that was different from the usual bills. The parchment felt thick in her hand, and her name was written in neat, familiar handwriting. She turned it over and over, as if the more she looked at it, the less she would have to open it. Mark's handwriting. Her heart skipped a beat. She had not heard from him in months. 2 years before, Sarah and Mark had planned a life together. They met at a small coffee shop where Sarah worked part-time. Mark was in town for a conference, and the first time he smiled at her as he ordered a cappuccino, she felt warm inside. They shared stories over steaming cups, and before long those stories became a promise. Under a bright summer sky, Mark knelt beside a wildflower field and asked her to marry him. Sarah's answer was a breathless yes. For 24 months, they built dreams brick by brick. They imagined a cozy home with pale blue walls. They pictured late Sunday mornings baking cinnamon rolls. They even talked about children and the names they might have. Their laughter filled their small apartment. And sometimes Sarah would pause in the middle of a chore just to watch him, loving the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed. Then one November evening, everything changed. The air outside carried the first chill of winter, and the wind rattled the windows. Sarah had stayed late at work. She walked through the door, jacket zipped tight, expecting Mark to greet her with the comforting smell of his cooking. Instead, she found an empty apartment and a letter waiting on the kitchen counter. He wrote about feeling lost and uncertain. He said he did not know how to tell her in person, and he feared he was missing something important inside himself. Sarah. Read and reread the words until they blurred. The next day, her world felt hollow. The apartment felt too big, the silence too loud. The dreams they built lay shattered like broken glass on the hardwood floor. In the months that followed, Sarah tried to rebuild her life. She repainted the walls a soft gray. She took extra shifts at the cafe. On slow afternoons, she found herself doodling flowers on napkins, remembering the field where he proposed. Her friends rallied around her. They offered hugs, movie nights, and cups of tea. They told her she would find someone new, someone better. But Sarah only nodded and smiled, because her heart still stretched toward the past. Then, on that spring morning, the envelope arrived. Sarah stared at it until her coffee went cold. She thought for a long moment. Would it be easier to ignore it? To throw it away without reading? But she knew the answer before she asked. She slid her finger beneath the flap and opened the envelope. Inside was a card with delicate lettering. You are invited to witness our next chapter. Wedding of Mark and Emma. And beneath the date, a note in Mark's handwriting. I hope you will sing the song we loved. Sarah's hands trembled as she held the card. The song they loved was The Light of You, the song Mark played on the guitar the night he proposed. They sang it together, their voices low and hopeful. Sarah felt a surge of dread and something heavier curiosity, maybe. She placed the card on the table and closed her eyes. The invitation felt like a door opening to a dark room she was not sure she was ready to enter. Her phone buzzed. It was her friend Lily. Lily always knew when Sarah needed her. Sarah sent Lily a picture of the invitation. Lily called almost immediately. You aren't going? Lily asked.
Yes.
Isn't singing that song supposed to help you heal? Sighed. I don't know. I feel like it will hurt more in person. Lily's voice softened. You're stronger than you think. You can do this. After the call, Sarah sat quietly. Memories washed over her the way Mark's hand felt in hers. It's the way they danced barefoot in the living room, the late-night talks under a blanket. She hated that these memories still had power. She took a deep breath. She had moved on, or she thought she had. Maybe that was part of the problem. Maybe she needed to close the chapter for good. She wanted to sing that song again, hear her own voice, remind herself who she was. A few days later, Sarah bought a new dress. It was pale lavender, soft like spring. She tried it on in her bedroom mirror. The fabric flowed around her knees, and she twirled, imagining herself confident rather than anxious. She stepped back and looked hard at her reflection. A gentle smile formed. She could do this. She walked out of the room and called Emma, Mark's bride-to-be, whom she had met. "Only once at a quick coffee meet-up," Emma answered with warmth in her voice. "I'm so glad you're coming," she said. "It means a lot to both of us." Sarah felt relief mixed with the same flutter of nerves. They spoke about the song, the timing, and the ceremony, and Emma asked if Sarah wanted to select any special arrangement, any detail that would make her comfortable. Sarah suggested the piano introduction start softly, so she could cue her entrance. Emma said yes, and the call ended with more warmth and hope than Sarah expected. On the day of the wedding, Sarah woke before sunrise. She had trouble sleeping. The night before, her mind racing through every possible scenario. She lay in bed, the pale light of dawn slipping through the curtains, and recalled the first notes of The Light of You. The melody was soft, almost like a whisper, and the words spoke of promise and love's gentle power. She imagined her voice carrying those words again. She dressed carefully. She styled her hair in loose waves. She applied light makeup, choosing soft shades that felt like her. In the mirror, she saw a woman who had been through heartache and had the courage to stand again. She picked up the invitation card from her vanity and tucked it into the pocket of her dress. Then she left her quiet apartment, locking the door behind her, as Sarah drove to the venue. A small chapel near a lake, memories flickered like passing scenery. She thought of Mark's voice, the way it had sounded when he sang to her. She thought of the letter he left, the shock of loss that rippled through her days. But she also thought of her own strength, the way she had rebuilt her life, repainted her walls, and found joy in her work and in her friends. She kept her grip steady on the steering wheel, her heart steady in its resolve. At the chapel, Sarah took a deep breath before stepping from her car. The early morning air smelled of fresh grass and water lilies. She followed a gravel path toward the doors, where guests in soft spring colors chatted quietly. Some noticed her and smiled. Some did not. She held her head high, shoulders back. She was here because she chose to be, not because anyone forced her inside the chapel. The sunlight filtered through stained glass, casting gentle colors on polished wood pews. Sarah found Emma by the piano. Emma's face lit up when she saw her. They hugged. Emma's eyes glistened. "Thank you," she whispered. Sarah hugged her back, feeling a warm bond. Behind them, Mark stood with a gentle look, grateful and nervous. Sarah felt a moment's pang, but she pushed it aside with a thought. She would honor the song. Honor her own heart. In the moments before the ceremony began, Sarah sat quietly. Sheet music rested on her lap. She traced her finger along the notes. Feeling the paper's smooth surface, she whispered the first line under her breath, steadying herself. The organist began to play a slow introduction, its chords filling the quiet chapel. Sarah closed her eyes. In that hush, she felt both the past and a new beginning. She told herself, "When the time comes, sing from your heart." When the officiant began to speak, Sarah held her breath. She stood as directed and walked toward the front, each step echoing softly. She saw Mark standing beside his bride, and she felt a rush of memories, but also a rush of clarity. She was not the same woman who said yes on that wildflower field. 2 years ago, she was stronger now, with her own voice ready to be heard as she reached the piano. Sarah placed her hands on the keys, feeling the cool wood beneath her fingers. She took a final breath, tips of her fingers poised above the keys. The chapel grew still. Then she played the first notes of The Light of You. Voice joined the piano, soft, clear, and honest. And with that song, Sarah began to heal, step by step, note by note, in front of everyone who once saw. Sarah's first notes drifted through the chapel like a gentle breeze. She closed her eyes and let the music carry her, each chord unfolding a memory. Her voice was soft at first, almost shy, but it grew stronger with each line. She thought of the nights when she and Mark sat by his old acoustic guitar, sharing this very song. Back then, their voices blended in harmony, hopeful and bright. Now, she sang alone and felt an unexpected power in her own breath and heart. As she reached the chorus, her hands found confidence on the piano keys. The melody swelled, and Sarah felt the air around her lift. She opened her eyes and saw Emma watching with tender pride. Emma's gentle smile gave Sarah courage. She pictured Emma as a friend, someone who had shown kindness when Sarah had felt alone. In that moment, Sarah sang not for Mark, but for herself and for Emma too. Guests sat in quiet awe. Some held hands, their shoulders touching. Others wiped tears away. The sun shone through the stained glass, splashing colors on the polished wood floor. Sarah noticed an older couple near the front. Their eyes glistened with understanding, as if they knew the story behind every word. She felt a bond with them, and that bond carried the song forward. Midway through the song, a soft tremble threatened her voice. Sarah had to fight the lump in her throat. Memories tumbled back. The night Mark proposed, the winter letter, the empty apartment. She felt the weight of those memories, but she also felt her own strength. She pressed a little more firmly on the piano keys and let her voice rise, clear and true. She reminded herself that this moment was hers, a chance to reclaim her voice and her story. When she sang the verse about hope shining like sunlight, she saw tears gliding down Emma's cheeks. Emma reached for a handkerchief and dabbed her eyes, but she stayed focused on Sarah's performance. That made Sarah smile, even as she sang words of both loss and hope. She wondered what Emma felt. Perhaps Emma was thinking of her own journey, her own hopes and dreams, and how love could be gentle and kind. Mark stood beside Emma, his face showing a mixture of pride and regret. Sarah looked at him for a brief moment and recognized the man she once loved. She saw his admiration for her talent and his sorrow for the pain he had caused. She felt compassion for him, like a soft bridge between past and present. Then she turned back to her music and let the song continue to flow. The chapel grew still. As Sarah moved into the quieter, more tender part of the song, her voice whispered the words, and each syllable trembled with emotion. She thought of the times she had cried alone, of the nights she had read Mark's letter until her eyes hurt. She thought of the way she had painted her walls gray, trying to cover every trace of their love. And she thought of the new dreams she held now, dreams of freedom, of friendship, and of a future she would build on her own. A gentle hush fell over the room. Sarah could hear her own heartbeat, steady and strong. She sang of healing and of new light, and her voice seemed to float above the rows of people. She realized that the song was like a bridge helping her cross from sorrow to peace. She felt tears roll down her cheeks, but she did not stop. She let the tears fall, and she let her voice remain unbroken. That was her gift to herself. Neared the final chorus, the piano notes swelled again. Sarah straightened her posture, feeling the full power of her own song. Her voice reached every corner of the chapel. She sang not just the lyrics, but a message of resilience, that broken hearts can mend, that endings can become beginnings, that a wounded soul can learn to sing again. When she hit the last note, the chapel was silent for a heartbeat. Then a gentle murmur began, like waves on a quiet shore. The guests rose slowly, offering a standing ovation filled with warmth and respect. Sarah felt a glow in her chest, as though she had shared something true and brave. She bowed her head in gratitude, feeling tears of joy mixed with tears of release. Emma hurried forward, hugging Sarah tightly. "That was beautiful," Emma whispered. "Thank you for sharing your heart." Sarah felt Emma's arms around her and returned the hug. She felt safe in that embrace, as if two friends held each other and shared understanding. Emma stepped back and smiled through her tears. "I knew you'd be perfect," she said. Mark approached with a gentle step. Eyes glistened, and he looked at Sarah with respect. I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I never meant to hurt you." Sarah met his gaze. She felt the echo of old pain, but it felt softer now, faded like an old photograph. She nodded, her voice steady. "No," she said, "and I forgive you." Mark's relief was visible. His shoulders relaxed, and he offered a small, grateful smile. The officiant returned and led the ceremony to its close. Sarah stepped back, the sheet music in her hand. She felt a lightness she had not known in a long time. The guests filed out, offering kind words to Sarah as they passed. Some spoke of how moved they were. One elderly woman patted Sarah's hand, and said, "Your voice carries hope." Sarah smiled and thanked her, feeling warmth spread through her. Later, at the reception in a garden beside the lake, Sarah found a quiet spot under a blossoming tree. She held a glass of sparkling juice and watched Emma and Mark dance to a soft song. Their faces glowed with happiness. Sarah felt a sense of peace as she looked at them. She thought of how love could change form from one chapter to another, and still carry its gentle wonder. A few friends from the cafe arrived to surprise Sarah. They cheered and brought her a plate of wedding cake. Sarah laughed as one friend smeared some frosting on her nose. They hugged and chatted about the lovely ceremony. Sarah realized how much her friends had supported her, how they had helped her rebuild. She felt grateful for each one, for their kindness and faith in her. As the evening sun dipped lower, lanterns lit around the garden. Sarah walked along the water's edge, the air cool and calm. She thought of her own journey, the proposal in the wildflower field, the heartbreak, the lonely nights, and now this moment of release and healing. She knew she would carry the song with her always, but now it was hers to own, not tied only to Mark. It was part of her story, a story of finding strength in her own voice. When she returned to the gathering, Emma greeted her. "I have one more surprise," Emma said with a mischievous smile. "We want you to choose a song for our first dance next year." Sarah's eyes widened. Emma took her hand. "Something that speaks of hope and new beginnings." Sarah thought for a moment, then smiled. "I know just the song." Under the soft glow of lantern light, Sarah laughed with her friends and the happy couple. She felt full of life and possibility. She knew pain would always be part of her story, but it would not define her. She had sung her truth, shared her heart, and found a gentle peace. The night carried soft music and happy chatter. Knew that this was the start of a new song for her life, one she would write with every word she spoke and every note she chose to sing. Sarah woke early the next morning to the soft light of dawn filtering through her curtains. She lay for a moment, listening to the gentle hum of the air and the distant call of birds waking in the trees. The day after the wedding felt like a quiet gift, as if the world paused to let her breathe. She sat up and reached for her phone, reading messages of thanks and praise from friends who had attended. Each note warmed her heart and reminded her of how far she had come. After a few moments, Sarah rose and walked to her small kitchen. She rinsed a mug and poured hot water for tea. As the steam curled upward, she thought about the promise Emma had made the night before, choosing the song for the couple's first dance next year felt like an honor. Sarah felt a gentle flutter in her chest. She smiled softly and took a slow sip of tea, letting the warmth ease her mind. She moved to her desk and pulled out a notebook. The pages were blank, waiting for her words. Sarah flipped to a fresh sheet and wrote at the top, "Songs of hope and new beginnings." She tapped the pen against her lip, recalling melodies she loved. She thought of a tune with soft piano chords that sounded like sunrise breaking over the horizon. She scribbled some ideas and small notes about lyrics, feeling the familiar spark of creativity. Hours passed as Sarah worked. She paused only to stretch and refill her tea. The sun climbed higher, and her small apartment filled with golden light. Sarah realized how much she missed these quiet mornings, when her mind felt clear and her heart felt full. She wrote down lines about gentle rains washing away pain, of new flowers blooming, of finding strength in simple moments. She underlined phrases that felt true to her own journey. By midday, Sarah felt hungry. She headed to the kitchen and chopped vegetables for a salad. She added avocado, cherry tomatoes, and a sprinkle of seeds. As she prepared her lunch, she thought of her friends at the cafe. They had supported her through lonely nights and long shifts. She decided to make an extra salad and a loaf of bread to bring to them tomorrow. It felt good to give back. After eating, Sarah gathered her coat and stepped outside. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of flowering trees. She walked to the bakery near her apartment. The bell above the door tinkled as she entered. The baker greeted her by name. She ordered a fresh croissant and a small baguette. The baker wrapped them carefully and handed them over with a smile. Sarah thanked him and tucked the bread under her arm. She made her way to the cafe where she worked. The morning rush had ended, but a few customers lingered over coffee and pastries. Sarah smiled at them as she entered and set the bread on the counter. Her friend Maria, who managed the cafe, came over. Maria's eyes lit up when she saw the bread. "Did you bake?" she asked. Sarah laughed and shook her head. "I bought it to share," she said. Maria hugged her and told her how much it meant. Sarah spent the afternoon helping behind the counter. She steamed milk for lattes, rang up orders, and chatted with regulars. She felt a comfortable rhythm in her tasks, her hands moving easily as she poured coffee and arranged pastries. A young couple celebrated an anniversary, and Sarah brought them a small heart-shaped cookie on the house. They thanked her with laughter and gratitude. Sarah felt a gentle warmth in her chest. She realized that small acts of kindness could fill other hearts as well as her own. When the cafe closed for cleaning, Sarah stayed behind to talk with Maria. They scrubbed tables and wiped down counters. The fluorescent lights glowed overhead. Maria asked about the wedding. Sarah told her about the performance, the tears, the applause. She spoke of Emma and Mark's gratitude and how she felt when she hit the final note. Maria listened, nodding and smiling. When Sarah finished, Maria said, "You gave them a gift that night, Sarah, and you gave yourself one too." Sarah agreed. She felt a steady confidence she had never known. The heartbreak that once felt like a storm had become rain that nourished new growth. She thought of the song she was writing and the way her own voice had carried through the chapel. She believed that music could heal, not just her, but others as well. She thanked Maria and said goodnight, stepping out into the cool evening air. On her way home, Sarah paused by a small park. Lanterns hung between trees and a few families strolled along the path. She sat on a bench and closed her eyes. She listened to the laughter of children and the soft rustle of leaves. She thought of the lines she wrote that morning about gentle rains and new flowers, muttered some of the words softly as if singing them. Her voice was barely a whisper, but in that hush she heard the promise of her song taking shape. Back in her apartment, Sarah made a cup of chamomile tea and settled on her couch with her notebook. She read through the ideas she had written, refining lines and crossing out the ones that felt less true. She wrote new verses, imagining Emma and Mark dancing under soft lights, a gentle melody carrying them into the night. She tapped her pen. As she chose words that spoke of courage, of letting go, of love that could grow in different forms, hours slipped by. The moon rose, and the city quieted. Sarah set her notebook aside and picked up her guitar, strumming soft chords that matched her words. Her fingers moved easily over the strings. She sang the draft of the chorus, her voice mixing with the guitar's gentle hum. She felt a familiar thrill, the kind that came when words and melody met. She closed her eyes and let the music flow, her song becoming a bridge between her past and her future. When she finished, Sarah felt tired but happy. She set the guitar aside and stretched. She glanced at the clock late, but she did not mind. She thought of the gift she would bring the next day to her friends at the cafe, and of the song she was crafting for Emma and Mark. She felt a sense of purpose that went beyond her own heart. She wanted to share healing through music, to help others find hope in their own stories. The next morning, Sarah rose with the sun again. She dressed in comfortable clothes and packed her bag with the bread and salad she had prepared. She added her guitar case and her notebook filled with lyrics. She took one last look at her apartment, a space she had filled with her own style, a place of comfort and growth. She smiled and locked the door behind her. At the cafe, her friends greeted her with hugs and curious smiles at the bread and salad. Sarah served them lunch and told them about the song she was writing. They listened with interest, and one friend suggested a melody change. They hummed ideas and laughed as they worked together. Sarah felt grateful for their support and creative input. She realized that her music could bring people together, creating a community of kindness. After lunch, Sarah packed up and walked to the music studio downtown. She had arranged to meet a local pianist, Robert, who offered to help her refine the melody for Emma and Mark's first dance. The studio was a bright room with large windows and a grand piano in one corner. Robert greeted her warmly. They sat at a table with her notebook spread between them. Sarah sang the chorus for Robert, her voice clear and honest, his fingers tapping on the table. When she finished, he nodded. "There's a beautiful simplicity here," he said. "Let's add a gentle bridge to bring space before the final chorus." He played a few chords on the piano, and Sarah tried singing over them. The notes filled the room, and Sarah felt the melody grow. She closed her eyes and let the music guide her. They worked together for hours, crafting the song section by section. Robert suggested small changes in chord progressions. Sarah adjusted lyrics to match the flow. They laughed when a line felt awkward and found better words. As the afternoon light faded into evening, they reached a version that felt complete. Sarah felt a mixture of pride and relief. The song carried warmth and hope in every note. Robert stood and offered his hand. "This will be beautiful for their dance," he said. Sarah shook his hand and thanked him. She packed her notebook and guitar, feeling excitement for the next step. She imagined Emma and Mark's faces as they first heard the finished song. She knew it would be a moment of joy and connection. That evening, Sarah returned home feeling a soft glow of accomplishment. She made tea and sat at her desk to write a message to Emma, telling her that the song was nearly ready and sharing a few lyrics. She hesitated before sending, then tapped send with a smile. The message popped up. Emma replied almost immediately. With gratitude and a promise to send more information about the dance style, Sarah read the words and felt her heart lift. Before sleep claimed her, Sarah closed her eyes and thought of the coming months. She would continue to work on the song, perform it at the wedding next year, and share her gift of music with others. She felt a deep sense of purpose and joy. She whispered to herself, "This is only the beginning." With that thought, she drifted into peaceful sleep, ready for the new chapters her life would bring. Sarah felt a flutter of excitement when she saw the reply from Emma. The bride-to-be sent a video message with her thoughts on the song. Sarah tapped the play button and watched Emma in her living room, soft light around her. "Sarah," Emma said, voice warm, "the song is perfect. I love the bridge you added. It feels like a gentle breath between verses. Mark and I have been dancing to your draft in our living room. It makes us smile every time." Sarah's heart lifted. She felt pride but also tenderness. This song was a gift from her heart, and seeing its meaning for Emma and Mark made her feel connected to something larger. Over the next few weeks, Sarah devoted herself to preparing the final version of the song and planning a small showcase for Emma and Mark. She reached out to musicians she trusted, a violinist named Grace, and a cellist named Henry who agreed to join her. They would record a simple arrangement: piano, violin, cello, and her voice. Sarah believed that the rich tones of the strings would bring depth and warmth to the melody. One afternoon, Sarah met Grace and Henry in a cozy rehearsal room at the Community Arts Center. The walls were lined with posters of past performances. A grand piano stood near a tall window. Sarah carried her notebook and guitar, while Grace cradled her violin case, and Henry bore his cello. They exchanged greetings and settled into chairs in a circle. Sarah sang the first verse softly, accompanied by Robert's piano track playing. On her phone, Grace closed her eyes, finger poised on the violin strings. Henry leaned forward, listening. When Sarah finished, Grace hummed a long, sweet note and said, "There's so much space for the strings here. We can weave around your voice, echoing the melody." Henry nodded. "I can add a warm underpinning in the chorus to give it a gentle lift." Sarah smiled. "That sounds beautiful. Let's try it." They spent the afternoon working through each section. Grace followed Sarah's vocal line with a soft singing tone. Henry held long, smooth notes beneath the bridge. Sarah guided them on tempo and expression. They paused when a phrase felt off and tried different rhythms. When they reached the final chorus, they all felt an electric moment, a moment when music grew beyond individual parts and became something shared. Sarah felt tears in her eyes. She realized how this song, born from her own pain and hope, now held the love of four hearts. After rehearsal, they scheduled a recording session for the coming weekend at a small studio downtown. Sarah left with a sense of calm purpose. She had turned her story into music, and that music now carried many voices. On the day of the recording, Sarah arrived early. The studio smelled of polished wood and fresh coffee. A small sound booth stood behind glass, and in the main room, microphones hung from stands. Emma and Mark had been invited to listen quietly. They wanted to hear the final arrangement together. Sarah felt both nervous and excited. Grace and Henry arrived, carrying instruments in cases. They greeted Sarah and arranged their chairs near the piano. Robert sat at the keyboard, adjusting his headphones. The sound engineer, Max, welcomed Sarah with a friendly nod. He guided them through the process, first a sound check, then recording each part separately, and finally a full run. Sarah sat at the piano and sang the first verse into the microphone. Her voice echoed softly in her headphones. She felt a familiar calm as she sang. As she finished, Max nodded and said, "Great take. Let's move on to the strings." Grace and Henry stepped into the booth. Grace played the violin intro, her bow gliding across the strings. Henry added his cello line. Sarah listened and felt her heart swell. Together, they recorded several takes, each one richer than the last. Finally, they recorded a full run. Sarah sang, while Grace and Henry played live. Robert joined on piano. The sound of the three instruments and Sarah's voice blended into a warm tapestry of sound. When they finished, Emma and Mark, watching through the glass, wiped tears from their eyes. Max called through the intercom, "That was beautiful. I think we've got it." Sarah let out a breath she hadn't known she held. A week later, Sarah received the mixed track from Max. She closed her eyes as she pressed play. The song filled her apartment, gentle and strong. She listened to each instrument find its place, and to her voice carrying hope in every note. The music ended. She felt a soft peace settle in her chest. She knew this song would hold a special place in Emma and Mark's wedding and in her own heart. As the wedding date approached, Sarah helped Emma plan the timing for the first dance. They met in a sunlit cafe and sipped iced tea. Emma showed Sarah the layout of the reception hall, a smooth wooden floor under twinkling lights. Tables arranged in a semicircle, a space left open for the couple's dance. They walked through the steps of the dance, Mark joining them with a shy grin. Sarah pressed play on her phone, and the song began. Mark extended his hand to Emma, and they moved together in gentle rhythm. Sarah watched, smiling. Their steps were guided by her music, and their faces shone with love. "Practice," they thanked Sarah with tight hugs. Emma said, "You've given us more than a song. You've given us memories we'll hold forever." Mark nodded, eyes bright. "We won't forget this." Sarah felt a quiet joy. She realized how her talent could touch lives in unexpected ways. The morning of the wedding arrived, crisp and clear. Sarah dressed in a soft green dress that complemented her lavender one from the first performance. She styled her hair simply, letting soft curls frame her face. She carried a small bouquet of white flowers given by Emma as a thank you gift. Sarah felt a pulse of excitement as she remembered the journey that had led her here from heartbreak. 2 songs of shared joy. At the reception hall, staff arranged the final touches. Candles flickered on tables and lanterns swung overhead. The DJ played light music as guests found their seats. Sarah stowed her notebook in her bag and took her place near the edge of the dance floor. She watched as Emma and Mark finished their dinner, quiet moments shared between them. The DJ finished the set and stepped to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "now for a very special moment. Please welcome Emma and Mark for their first dance to a song by Sarah." The lights dimmed slightly. Piano chords began to play. Sarah's heart pounded as the opening notes of her song, now backed by a soft recording of strings, filled the hall. Emma took Mark's hand. They stepped into the center and began to dance. The floor felt smooth beneath their feet. Sarah watched each step, the way Emma rested her head on Mark's shoulder, the way Mark supported her gently. Their faces glowed in the candlelight. Guests watched in silence, many with tissues in hand. Sarah closed her eyes and let the music wash over her. She remembered her own first performance here, the way her song had become a gift of healing. Now, she saw that gift come full circle. her music carrying someone else's love. She smiled softly, tears of joy slipping down her cheeks. As the final notes of the song drifted away, the hall erupted in applause. Emma and Mark embraced, and Sarah felt warmth flood her chest. She joined in the applause from the side, clapping, until her hands stung. Emma and Mark looked toward her and waved with wide smiles. Sarah waved back, her heart swelling with happiness. Later, at the same venue under lantern light, Sarah sat with Emma, Mark, and friends. They talked about the dance, the song, and the memories they had made. Sarah felt a deep sense of belonging and purpose. She realized that her journey from heartbreak to hope had created a melody that touched many hearts. After the guests left, Sarah helped Emma and Mark pack up. They thanked her again, offering hugs and smiles. Emma said, "We can't wait to share the song with friends and family who couldn't be here." Mark added, "Your music will always be part of our story." On her way home, Sarah walked through quiet streets. She thought of the nights she had spent writing lyrics, rehearsing with musicians, and performing her song. She thought of the way her heart had opened again, and of the love she witnessed between Emma and Mark. She felt a gentle glow of gratitude. Back in her apartment, Sarah placed the recording on her shelf among her favorite books and trinkets. She sat at her desk and opened her notebook. On a fresh page, she wrote, "New stories await." She smiled and closed the notebook. She turned off the light and lay in bed, feeling peace and excitement for tomorrow. Sarah drifted to sleep with music in her heart, ready for the next journey her life would bring. ChatGPT said, Sarah woke one bright morning to the sound of her phone buzzing on the bedside table. She sat up and saw a message from a community center where she had once played her song for a small gathering. They asked if she would teach a weekly music class for adults who wanted to learn to sing or play an instrument. Sarah smiled and stretched. The idea of guiding others through music made her heart beat with excitement. She tapped out a quick reply. "Yes, I would love to." After breakfast, she gathered her guitar and notebook, then walked to the community center. The sun shone softly on the sidewalk, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of blooming jasmine. At the center, a few chairs were already set in a circle. The director greeted Sarah warmly and introduced her to the first students, a retired teacher named Louise, a young father named Jamal, and a shy librarian named Priya. They all sat with hopeful smiles, ready to learn. Sarah began by asking each person why they loved music and what they wanted to learn. Louise said she always wanted to sing in public, but felt too nervous. Jamal said he wanted to play simple guitar songs for his children at bedtime. Priya said she longed to write her own lyrics but didn't know where to start. Sarah listened. With care, she thought of her own journey, from singing at her ex's wedding to writing her song of hope. She realized that everyone had a story to tell through music. She taught them a simple breathing exercise to help ease nerves. Then she showed them a basic chord progression on guitar and explained how their voices could follow gentle melodies. She guided Louise to sing a few notes, encouraging her with a warm smile. She helped Jamal find his first chord, and he beamed when his finger landed in the right place. She invited Priya to speak a few words she had written, helping her shape them into a melody. The room filled with soft, earnest music and laughter. After the class, Sarah gathered her guitar and notebook and walked home under the afternoon sun. She thought of Emma and Mark and how their dance had inspired her own path. Music had healed her heart, and now it was also helping others heal in small ways. Back at home, Sarah decided to visit Emma and Mark. She called Emma, and they arranged to meet at a small cafe by the lake. When Sarah arrived, Emma waved from a corner table. She looked radiant in a light blue dress, and Mark sat beside her, holding her hand. They greeted Sarah with hugs and smiles. They talked about life after the wedding, Emma said. She and Mark had moved into a new house near the water. They painted their living room in soft cream and hung Sarah's framed lyrics on the wall. Mark said he often played Sarah's song on his guitar in the evenings, remembering how it had carried them through their first dance. Emma added that they had shared the recording with friends who could not attend the wedding, and it had brought tears and joy to everyone who heard it. Sarah felt a warm glow in her chest. She was grateful that her song had become part of their everyday life. She told them about her music class and how it felt to teach others. Emma and Mark listened with pride, thrilled that Sarah was sharing her gift so generously. Emma reached across the table and squeezed Sarah's hand. "You have a true talent," she said. "You must keep sharing it." Mark nodded. "You've helped us in ways we can't fully say. Now it's time you helped even more people." Their words planted a seed in Sarah's mind. She had been thinking about writing more songs, but she had hesitated, worried about opening old wounds. Now she felt certain that her stories could comfort others. She began to imagine an album, a collection of songs about healing, hope, and new beginnings. She shared the idea with Emma and Mark, and they cheered her on. Emma said, "I'll help." "You with planning?" "I know some friends in the music world," Mark added, "and I'll help with fundraising if you need it." 6 weeks later, Sarah found herself in a small recording studio again, this time for her own project. She arrived with 3 new songs, one about finding strength after loss, one about the gentle joy of friendship, and one about the promise of tomorrow. Grace the violinist, Henry the cellist, and Robert the pianist joined her. They worked side by side, weaving the instruments together with Sarah's clear voice. As they recorded each take, Sarah felt the same thrill she had felt for Emma and Mark's song, but even deeper, because these songs were her own truths. When the recordings were mixed, Sarah held the USB drive in her hand, feeling proud. She organized a small release party at the community center where her students and friends could listen. On the night of the party, the center filled with warm light and soft chatter. Louise, Jamal, and Priya sat in the front row, their eyes shining. Emma and Mark attended with a few friends, cheering Sarah on. Sarah stepped to the small stage with her guitar. She looked at the faces before her, people who had shared her journey in one way or another. She took a breath and began to sing. The first song? Her voice carried the years of learning, healing, and hope. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. She felt tears of joy slip down her cheeks. She realized that her music had come full circle. It had healed her, helped others heal, and now it was spreading even wider. In the months that followed, Sarah balanced her days between teaching music classes, writing new songs, and sharing her story with anyone who would listen. She felt a gentle confidence settle in her soul. She still remembered the hollow days after the breakup. But now those memories felt like distant clouds that no longer blocked her light. One evening, after a long day of teaching, Sarah walked by the lake, where she first met Mark. The sky was painted in pink and gold. She paused on the boardwalk and watched the water ripple in the breeze. She thought of her past love and the heartbreak that had once felt like a storm. She thought of Emma and Mark's wedding and how a song had changed everything. She thought of her new students finding courage and of the album that had brought so much warmth and community. Sarah lifted her face to the sky and whispered, "Thank you." She felt a soft peace, as if all the chapters of her life had led her here. She knew that life would continue to unfold in unexpected ways, but she also knew that she could meet each moment with an open heart and a song ready on her lips. She walked home along the boardwalk, her steps light. It was tucked into a frame on her wall now, a reminder of how a single choice to face her fear, to sing at that wedding, had transformed her life. She smiled and touched the glass gently. Inside, her guitar lay by the sofa, and her notebook waited on the desk. I opened the notebook and wrote on a fresh page, "New beginnings are everywhere." Then she picked up her guitar and strummed a soft chord. She began to sing a melody she had composed just that morning, her voice clear in the quiet room. The song was about hope and the simple magic of choosing to believe in yourself. As she sang, Sarah felt her heart fill with light. She knew she had found her path not just as a singer, but as someone who used music to build bridges, to heal wounds, and to bring people together. She smiled as the final note faded, and she felt the promise of tomorrow stretch before her, like a bright horizon. And with that promise in her heart, Sarah was ready for all the stories yet to come.